And tonight I'm going to be talking about a comparison. We're going to do a this versus that. And I am taking a live urban sketching class right now. And the teacher likes using a special kind of fountain pen. And fountain pens are wonderful because you can take them on the go. So for urban sketching, they're fantastic because you can fill the well of the fountain pen and then use the fountain pen with a continuous line for quite a lot longer than a dip pen can get messy, and a dip pen's not really efficient for when you are out on location. So let me show you here. This is we are going to unbox it, as it were. So here's the pen inside here. This is the Sailor brand. And it is a special Fude nib, and I'll show you about that once we open it. This is a company called Online, and this is a different kind of, again, a fountain pen. So you see the nib, it's called a fixed nib, meaning the nib doesn't, I mean, you can take it apart to clean it, but for the most part, you're using it as a fixed nib in there like that. And we're going to compare that to our pens are traditional dip pens. So this is a vintage, I think about 1940s barrel on this one. And it has a tip here that we can pop off and put other what are called nibs on. So that's why this is not a fixed nib. This is a removable nib. And this is a different kind by Speedball. You may recognize it. It's a form resin or plastic, and again, it has a tip that we can pull out and replace. So these two are called dip pens, meaning I have to have a little bottle here that I can dip them into to grab ink from. And then these other two here are your fixed nib fountain pens. So that's what we're going to be comparing tonight. Feel free to ask me any questions as we go through the workshop. That's why I like to do these classes live, so that if you do have any questions, then feel free to ask. And it looks like we have a good group over on YouTube. So thank you very much. And again, welcome in. Now, I am going to be showing you as we go along a couple of different kinds of ink, because even though a pen like, for instance, this one that comes with an ink cartridge for it, as a matter of fact, let me take this apart so I can show you. So a fountain pen has an ink cartridge that comes with it. And you can also get what is called an ink converter or a cartridge converter to go with your fountain pen. And it looks something like this. This is the one for the Sailor that goes with this new pen we're going to open tonight. And so this is an ink converter that's going to allow us to not just use the ink and it does come with ink. So, when you buy these fountain pens, they do come with an ink cartridge. However, if you want to put your own ink in there, then you're going to need something called an ink converter. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we get to the point where we fill the ink converter with some really cool inks. And that's another thing we're going to discuss tonight is the different kinds of inks, because you have inks that you use with your dip pens that may not be appropriate for your fountain pens. And the difference being that this nib on the dip pen is very easy to just rinse off in a glass of water and wipe it with a cloth and keep going. It's not as easy to get all of the ink out of the well. So inside the fountain pen here, you have a whole structure that holds ink in it in order to keep that ink flowing. And so it's not quite as easy to clean these as it is to clean a dip pen. So there are different types of ink that work in the two types. And I have some of those inks here. One of the inks that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight is this sketch ink. And let me see, the name of the company is Rohrer and Klinger. I believe it's a German company here. But they just make it super simple and they call it sketch ink. And I love this ink because it is a permanent ink. And it dries lickety-split. So we love that because then we can paint or draw right over top of it pretty quickly. But that is your, most people just call it R and K, the letter R and K ink. And it's called sketch ink, and it comes in a whole bunch of different colors. What I have tonight is I have the brown one, which is called Lily, and then the black one, which is called Lottie. And then I'll also be showing you or talking about when we get there. This is a Higgins ink, which you often see for calligraphy ink, but this is for the dip pen, not for your not for your fountain pens, y'all. And then of course there's something called China ink, or other times it's called India ink. So sometimes it's called China, sometimes it's called India, but either case, these are inks that are perfect for your dip pen, but don't use them in your fountain pen. And I'll explain why when we get a little closer to that. And then there's one other ink that I have here that is so beautiful. Beautiful that it's still in its original package. I just got it and I haven't had a chance to fill anything with it yet. But this is the Diatramentis. And notice the color is white. So especially if you want to work on paper that is not white paper, you can work on papers that are tinted or have colors. And the white ink looks so good, say on black paper or gray paper or toned tan paper. Then a white ink like this really comes into play. And the nice thing about this one is it will work with your fountain pens as well as your dip pens. So that's the thing that I think, if you're going to make an investment in ink, if you don't already own a bunch of inks, I think it's important to know how the different inks function so that you can purchase inks that will give you the most bang for your buck, right? That'll go across these different different painting media. And of course, we can always use a brush too. And this is a brush that I really enjoy with the inks. It's called a rigger brush. So it's long and skinny. And I like the marks and the flow that this gives off the rigger brush. But a lot of traditional people who do calligraphy with inks like that like to use a flathead brush. So a brush that's flat across here, because then as you're drawing with it, it's more similar to a calligraphy nib where it's straight across the top. So a lot of people like this kind of brush. And then I like to highlight the lines, the drawing or the illustration that I've made with my dip pens or with my fountain pens. I like to use a watercolor to, so this is the Christy Rice watercolor set here. And so you can see these are watercolors. And then I use, this is my favorite watercolor brush. It's the size 6 Princeton Velvet Touch round, but it has a very snappy point to it. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a nice snappy point, and I like that for detail work as well as this brush works for just about everything. But so tonight we will be doing an illustration using these various inks, and then popping a little bit of watercolor in there. The watercolor is so versatile. I like this because when it's dry, you can travel with it. It's super compact. You see there? Bloop, just like that. And this has a little, this is called a thumb ring, so, or a finger ring. So usually I just put my middle finger in there like that to hold it. And then it makes it easier if you're wanting to hold your brush and your watercolors. Okay, so I'm going to show you what we're painting tonight. It's something that, you know, when I'm on my walks, I'm always looking for things. So if they're in nature, or maybe it's a dog, or maybe it's a building, it's like the architecture, the way the sun is coming in. So especially the golden hour, which is around 5 o'clock in the afternoon when the sun's beginning to set and you get long shadows, that can look very dramatic with buildings. But I was walking recently near my post office, and it was after Hurricane Milton and a lot of tree branches had fallen down. So look at what I found. Ah, a wasp's nest, fortunately with no wasps in it. But look at the shapes and the interesting, oh, it looks so cool. And then right next to it was this incredible branch. So you see how rough the exterior of the branch is? That is like perfect for using a pen and ink. And then there are these little wispies here, the Spanish moss. So I figured the two of these together, we could do that together and that would look really cool. So that's going to be our subject, or the subject I'm going to mess around with tonight, using the inks. Uh, Kartik Kumar over on YouTube said, are we doing modern art tonight? Um, we are doing something that is more akin to illustration or urban sketching tonight. And so we're going to be working with in a very organic feeling with the dip pens and with the fountain pens. So you can get a feel for what's the difference between working with a dip pen and working with a fountain pen, and what different kinds of inks you would use for your dip pens and your fountain pens. Some inks run and some inks are permanent. And it just depends on what you want, which one you want to work with, right? And also some of it has to do with timing. You can take a permanent ink and put it down, and while it's still damp, you can run a brush with some water over it and get the effect of a watercolor. So timing also has uh, something to do with how these items will give you different results as well. Now, because we're talking about pens and fountain pens and dip pens, I wanted to show you something that's very accessible to most people, very inexpensive. This happens to be a vintage version, but it's the Speedball pen set. And I love this, what they call artist pen set. You see how it says artist pen set? And because of what they give you in the set. Now, this happens to, like I said, be a vintage one. I think it's from around the 1950s. But they give you a selection of nibs right here, a couple of different kinds of nibs, and then two different handles. One with a quill handle, so that means a teeny tiny, this is called a hunt tip, H-U-N-T. And let me pull it out so you can see it. So this is a short pen with a little teeny tiny tip to it. If you want to do detail scratches and things, maybe you want to go back in and put your shadows in, and you want to use a tiny nib tip to make little scratch marks. I tend to like bold marks, and so I rarely use this teeny tiny tip, but I want you to be aware that it is in some of the sets because the top of it is different from your typical dip pen. So my typical dip pen from Speedball is like this, and it's kind of a half round. You see at the top right here that it doesn't go all the way around. This Hunt type handle has a circle in it, but notice the circle is different. And the nib, this quill nib, you see how it's round right there at the end? Completely round. So this is a Hunt tip, and H-U-N-T, and that goes in there. And so it's helpful to have, if you want to do detail work or try it out, it's helpful to have both the Hunt handle and the regular handle. And that's why I really like this set, because it comes with both your standard handle here that'll take all these C type. So at the bottom of these, there's a little C, and that's where you shove it into the top of the handle. And then they're all different styles and types of nibs here. So it's an excellent, if you can get a set similar to this where you have a handle and then you have different nibs, I think it's not only economical, but it's a great way to learn how to work with dip pens. So let me put this one back together. It says for professionals, teachers, and students, Hunt Speedball. That's why this is the Hunt, because it was Hunt Speedball. Nowadays, I think it's just Speedball. Okay, so we're going to put that aside, but when you're on Whatnot, and Whatnot is an auction site. So if you're on your YouTube and ooh, somebody said it looks fancy. Yes. And someone else said that they're an absolute beginner. Excellent. Well, then a set like this is perfect for a beginner. That's why I wanted to share that with you. Now, on Whatnot, which is an auction platform that I'm also streaming from besides YouTube, um, sometimes you'll find people who are auctioning craft or art items. And this is actually, you see the old sucrets, that's a throat lozenge, right? But look at what's inside here. Oh, thank you, Florida Glass Girl. You're a good teacher. I want to show you what's inside here. Magic. That's what's inside there. Oh my gosh. These are vintage nibs for my speedball, my speedball pens. So that's why I think it's handy for you to have one of these, inexpensive black handles, which costs very little money. That's why I wanted to tell you about that. If you want to just try it, this will get the job done. Okay, if you want to test out and try it, but sometimes you can find these gems of somebody who doesn't write with a dip pen is going to have zero use for nibs like this. But oftentimes at antique or what are they called? Estate sales and stuff like that. This is exactly what you're going to find, a little sucrets or a little Altoids tin full of nibs. And it's like, oh my gosh, I just hit the jackpot. So in here, you're going to see at the back end of this is a little C. It just goes like that. Okay. And so if I were to take this one, which is a fine point, I can just pull it out. And then here you see the tip of that. And then this C shape fits right in there. Think that's how quick and easy it is to change your nibs on these. And you do tend to have to change your nibs often. So if you're using them a lot, you're going to find that when you first put it in, that it's giving you nice clean lines. But then after you've used it for a while, it may begin to give you jagged or um, it feathers as you're using it. And so then you may want to throw out the nib and throw in a new nib. Now, I like to do artwork that looks very organic. And so or even when I'm writing or drawing, I like those feathery or those uneven edges. So you can see that some of these are rusted, they're quite old. This one's rusted right here, but I don't mind the rusty dusty. To me, it's going to work to do what I want it to do. But if you want nice clean lines, you're going to want to make sure that you have clean tips. Now, if you're using a nib like this, which is fresh, let's say it's fresh out of the box, most of these have already been used to some degree. But if you have it fresh out of the box, there are a couple of ways to prepare it to receive your ink. Because sometimes if you dip it in the ink, you'll find the ink sheets off of it or it repels from the tip. And why is that? It's because when they manufacture it and they're slicing and cutting the metal, they have to use some sort of fluid to do that, like an oil, in order to be able to cut through that metal. And so the residue from that sits on the tip here. And then when you first go to use it, you may not get the uptake of ink that it should be giving you. So there are a couple of ways that you can just prepare the tip before you use it if it's brand new and you're using it for the first time. One is, and a lot of people don't like you doing that, but hey, it works. It's your spit. So I literally put it in my mouth. I'm sorry, not sorry. Like that. Hey, love me my motive studio. Exactly. LOL. And so you can put your spit on there, wipe it around, wipe it off with a cloth. Where's one of my paper towels? And then that should be ready to start with. Now, also, you can, if you have a white potato, okay, so like a Idaho potato, you can take an Idaho potato and you can stick it in the Idaho potato. Spear the Idaho potato. Yeah, I know, right? We're laughing here. And that there's some the starches or the fluids that are in the potato will help to clean off that little bit of lubrication, and then it should work. Also, and you wipe, you rinse it in water, wipe it off, and then it's also ready to go. Okay, so yes, I sometimes, if I'm doing a lot of penmanship, a lot of pen work, I have a potato sitting on my desk. I know it's crazy. It's crazy. But if it works, because no, I don't always want to be spitting all over my pens. So now, what I just showed you, these a lot of people call these speedball tips or speedball nibs, and then of course the speedball set that's very economical. Speedball has excellent books on calligraphy, or just to explain about the different tips and what types of shapes they give you. And so this is a book from 1984. I believe it's 1984, but there are different versions of the Speedball book, and it actually started in, I think, 1910. They started publishing these books. Let me see, because I have a later one. Yeah. So this is a later one that's really nice because it's spiral bound, and so it lays flat. And anything like this that I have, that I show you, the books and the supplies, I will put links in the description of the video on YouTube tomorrow, so that you can pop back into the video and find the items that we're talking about. And so this is another one of the books that I'll have linked. But right here, it shows you the very first calligraphy book was 1910. And the cool thing is they take you through the years. These are the covers of the books from Speedball, and it's several pages worth, and it's just so cool because they show you, that way you can recognize it if you're in the wild. If you're, say, at an antique store or something and there's a bin of books and you see something that looks like that, that could be a vintage, in this case 1922 Speedball book about lettering with their nibs, their tips. You can see some of the samples here that show up in those various books. So I like the history of drawing and the nibs and writing, and language. So here's another set. You can see you're starting to get into the mid-century. Actually, no, 1938 was the last one right here. And then here, okay, here's mid-century. So you can see kind of the rainbow colors and a little bit different sensibility coming in. This is the cover of the same book, but they keep adding to the book over time. And then they did something fancy here. They made a pull-out page, and so there are the rest of their covers. Doo, 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 doo. And so this book right here, which I believe is from 2011, is that what it says? No, 2015. Sorry about that. It's the 24th edition of the Speedball calligraphy book. And that's what this one is, which is so fabulous because of the spiral bound. I'll show you what it looks like. Oops. Come on now, you get back in there. Like that. The Speedball textbook. This one is terrific because I can turn it like this and put it on the table. It takes up less space because I can fully turn the pages around, and so it makes it a lot easier to follow along. And what I like about these books is that they show you, they explain about their different nibs. And earlier I mentioned this pen called the Sailor Fude pen that's very popular with um, urban sketchers. And the Fude nib, Fude is Japanese, but essentially, and the Sailor pen company is Japanese, but essentially it's a bent nib pen. So the very tip of the pen, instead of being straight, like this one right here is just straight, instead of being straight, it's bent on the end. And it gives you some interesting lines. So the nice thing about this Speedball book is it shows you for the different styles. So they have 3 different styles of bent tip nibs, and there's the A series, they call it, and this one has a square bent nib, and then they show you examples of the kinds of writing that you can do with it. And then that's the A type. The B type is a, like, who thought of this? I don't know. It's a round tip bent nib, crazy. And so this is some of the type of uh, writing that you can do with the B type circular nib. And then they also created a D type here. So on the nib itself, these speedball nibs, it actually has like say C-5 or something like that. So it has a code on it. So you know if it's an A, it's going to be a square bent nib. If it's a B, it's going to be a round bent nib. And if it's a D, it's going to be an oval bent nib. And then these are the different types of letters that you can do with that. So it's nice to have this easy reference to look at if you're looking for a particular type of font that you want to do. Now, I use them primarily for drawing, not for calligraphy, but I do have the reference books because I want to be sure that if I do want to do something, say a Christmas card or a holiday card, and we're doing that next week, I'm going to be doing a watercolor cards workshop, and you might want to write the words like Merry on it or ho 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 or something like that. And so then this kind of a textbook may come in handy for you to decide what kind of font you want to use, hence which type of tip to your pen you want to use. Now, this is a brand new book that I just got this week. I know I have a million books, but I'm never going to stop buying books, okay? And this came from Blick Art Supply, and it is called Creative Lettering and Beyond. Wow. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. The things that are in here are just absolutely fabulous. Now, it does show you what I like about this book is you see how it shows you the basic strokes, and then it gives you a page to work on. So this is actually a workbook so that they're encouraging you to use your pen and actually practice in the book, which I think is fabulous. And then I love that they give you lots and lots of examples. So it's like, here, you could do this on your page. And it's all about just learning, giving your hand that memory of what it is that you need to do in order to stroke those characters. Now, there's another page here. Let me get to this other page. So this one, what's neat about this is they also tell you or show you in here actual projects that you can do where you can use their different types of strokes to create finished pieces. And I like this where they're showing you the actual directions of the strokes and the stroke width so that you get a feel for how to do that fun, fancy writing. This is flourishes. I love doing flourishes like this. And actually, I bought this book because I want to practice flourishes more. That's this kind of thing right here, you know, leading into or out of a character. I want to practice that and do more of that. So that's what a book like this is good for. And then this is something that I think would be excellent to do with in particular, the fountain pens. And that is what they call illuminating letters. So it's taking a letter and then look at these. There's like little roses and little leaves and stuff. And oh my gosh, I'm so inspired. See, that's why I get books because they inspire me and I can't wait to sit down. The only problem is I have like 50 million different projects I want to do. And which one do I do first? Oh my gosh. So that's my latest obsession book that I'm going to be working through in order to uh, just get better at handwriting fun things. Hey there, Tragic Arts and Oddities. Welcome in over on Whatnot. And oh, greetings from Asha over on YouTube. Yes, welcome in. Thank you for watching. And let's see, I'm just looking to see what else I might need to show you before we get started. Paper. So if we're going to be working with pen and ink, either in the fountain pen or the dip pen, you want a paper that's similar to or that will take watercolor for the most part. So that is regular watercolor paper or what's called hot press or smooth watercolor paper. In my opinion, those are the best. But I mean, you absolutely can use these on just regular copy paper, or you can use them on um, like in a journal that may not necessarily be mixed media or set up for water. And the reason that I'm mentioning the water is because when I work with these pens, I'm doing it more artistically. And so I'm doing it in order to create some sort of illustration or artwork. So I want to be able to come in with a brush and a little bit of water or a little bit of watercolor paint and go over top of the imagery that I've created. But if you're not planning to put water over top of them, then just a regular sketchbook of some sort will work perfectly fine. You may find that when you're using, especially something that's more of a fine nib like this fountain pen, you may want a smoother paper rather than a paper that has texture like most watercolor paper. So this is my studio workhorse. It's the Canson XL watercolor paper, 140 pound. If you've been with me before, you've seen it. Oh, thank you. Arip said it's nice to listen to you. Thank you. So this is what's called cold press watercolor paper, and it has some texture to it. But if you're drawing to create an illustration that may just add character to your illustration, you may be perfectly fine with that. And because I like to add watercolor, or I like to even use water while the ink is still wet to get the ink to run, I find that this one, ooh, thanks for the hearts over on YouTube. I find that this one is, it's what I reach for the most. Let's put it that way. Um, then if you want more of a smooth paper, we've got this, which is the Fabriano mixed media paper. Now it's not quite as heavy as the Canson that I just showed you. The paper is slightly thinner, but it takes water because it's a mixed media paper, and it's smooth. So it's much smoother than your regular cold press watercolor paper. That Canon you showed was that, oh, the Canson. The Canson is cold press. Yes. And let me show that to you because this is my favorite one. It's called the Canson XL. They call it the XL because it has 30 or 36 pages in it. And then I usually try to buy it when it's 2 for 1. And it'll say right here that it's cold pressed. So if it says cold pressed, that means they've pressed it between, um, uh, usually it's felt. They pressed it between felt and they have not applied heat. So it takes the little bit of texture of the felt fabric. Now, when they do hot press, as the name implies, they actually heat it. They put the paper through heated rollers. And so when they put it through the heated rollers, that makes it very smooth. And so that's why a hot press paper is smooth. And that's what this mixed media paper you could think of as a hot press. They don't call it hot press, but it acts like a hot press because it is smooth. Now, you can also get watercolor paper. This is the Fabriano Studio watercolor, and it's actually going to say on it that it is hot press paper. So you know when you're standing there looking at it, it says hot press, and that means, but it also says studio watercolor, so you know it'll take water beautifully. It's 140 pounds. That means it's a nice thick paper. And so it's quite smooth. A lot of people like to work on this for illustration purposes. They like to work on this hot press watercolor paper if they're planning to, you know, slap some watercolor on there too. But another option, if you ever find it on sale, is this paper where it says Stonehenge paper. So Legion is a paper manufacturer. They make all different kinds of papers, including Yupo, which is a non-paper. It's made out of plastic. But this is their Stonehenge style paper, and it was originally designed for printmaking. So that's when you use those big rollers and you put it through with a wood block or a linoleum block, and it takes the impression of of the ink that's on the block. Now, it's also excellent for illustrative purposes because it's a 100% cotton. So it's really tiny on there, but it says 100% cotton paper, which makes it acid free and archival for an artist standpoint. And the paper itself, I've got a bunch of bunch of goodies in here, but the paper itself is beautifully smooth and it's designed to take a lot of water. So a lot of illustrators like to work on this Stonehenge paper, which is a printmaker's paper because it is so smooth. Now, another type of paper that I'm not going to show you is called Bristol paper. And the cool thing about Bristol paper is super smooth. And if you're looking for an inexpensive alternative to work on, the Bristol paper you can find at your office supply stores. So if you're in a Staples or you're in a Home Depot, or I'm sorry, Office Depot, or even sometimes when you're watching the craft shows on Whatnot, people will have Bristol paper. And it's a very inexpensive alternative. It's an excellent paper to start on. It's not 100% cotton like the Stonehenge, which is for fine artists, but it is an excellent alternative if what you're trying to do is just learn about playing with these things. So Bristol paper, I don't think I have any here. I know it has a yellow front to it. Oh, look, 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 look. I may have it. I may have it. Oh, yes. So this is Canson XL. So it's from the same line, Canson XL, and it says Bristol Smooth Paper. So you see it right there. This is excellent for doing illustrations as well. Oops, that piece. Super, super smooth. And it has a nice weight to it. It's not, but it's not designed to put a lot of water on it. So if you're going to want to do a lot of watercolor illustration work after having made your lines, I wouldn't recommend the Bristol. But if you're looking to just experiment with and play with the markings and get comfortable with that, it's a lesser expensive paper is the Bristol paper. So knock yourself out. Try that one. Okay. So before we go over top of the table, for those who were with me last week, I just wanted to show you how far I got on the pastel. So if you weren't here last week and you're interested in pastels, dry pastels, this is what we worked on last week. And that was, we were working on the ballerinas, the Degas ballerinas. And so this is how far I got on that one. And so that is using pastels, dry pastels. And I wanted to show that to you because the article, what's the GSM of your Stonehenge paper? Let me answer that before I get any further. I think it's 300, but let me check. It is 250 GSM. Okay, 250 GSM is the Stonehenge paper, 100% cotton acid free. Fabulous paper, fabulous. I love this format of the long skinny because it reminds me of panels. I grew up in Asia, and so 250 was what I found on the internet. Right, right, right. So it's 250. I love this long, skinny size because a lot of panels in Asia, where I grew up, the paintings are done that way. Like you'll see a stone and then you'll see a cherry blossom and a bird or an orchid or something. And they're done on these long, skinny silk papers or rice papers, and I just love that look, so that's why I bought that one. But I was talking to you about the um, pastels from last week, and the reason I wanted to mention it is that I did get the article up on my website. So if you're not familiar, I do have a website. It's Dietz Art. Let me just show you real quick here. So it is here, dietzart.com. And on the website each week, well, I try to stay up with it each week. Um, Whenever I do my workshops and then I save the video to YouTube under the live tab on my channel, then, and so I encourage you to subscribe if you're on YouTube and follow me if you're on Whatnot. Appreciate it. But in the article, I put the link to the video so that you can read the article and click and watch the video right in the website. And then I included, this is a picture that I got off the internet from Pixabay. So I like to use Pixabay as one of about 3 different sites I use to find imagery for inspiration for painting. And so this was the photograph that I pulled off of Pixabay, and I have the link to this photograph on Pixabay as well as a downloadable photo version of it on that website article. So if you want to go there, you can just click the button or click the link to Pixabay and grab this image if you want to try working on it yourself. But I was really, I was happy with how far I got. It's lots of layers. It takes a lot of, people think, oh, you're just going to sketch real quick and you're done. No, not really. Not really with pastels. You can, just like with anything, you can spend a lot of time working on it. And I want to show you really up close here in the hair. You'll see lots of colors and lots of layers and what's called stippling, which are little dots with the pastel. And yeah, so it can take a lot longer than you might think to build out a whole pastel painting. But I didn't complete it yet, but I am well on the way, and I hope to have it completed and be able to show you the finished artwork next week. Okay, let's go ahead then and come over top of the table. All right, so these are my details in terms of where you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Also, again, my website, dietzart.com. And then if you are on Whatnot and you'd like to follow me on YouTube, it's Tristina Dietz Elms Artist. If you're on YouTube and you want to follow me on Whatnot, all you have to do is click the link in the description of the video on YouTube, and that'll bring you over to the conversation and later the auction on Whatnot. Also, if you're on YouTube, folks that are on Whatnot can throw me a tip if they're interested anytime during the show. And on YouTube, if you want to send me a tip for the free workshop, you can go to ko-fi.com. That's ko-fi.com. And it's Tristina Dietz Art on there. And you can buy me a coffee. That'd be awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So let's get started with some of these pens. So this is a notepad. It's a Canson Montvale. So that same company that I showed you that had the XL, this is a watercolor paper. It's cold press, 140 pounds. So I have a few experiments in here. But I like the size of this. It's like what, 7.5 by 10 or something like that. Oh, 5.5 by 8.5. So it's a nice size for urban sketching or anything like that. But I'm just going to show you some demonstrations on here with that. Let's move this out of the way to start. And so what's on here right now, the blue writing, is the online fountain pen. So that's this pen. When you receive a fountain pen, I'm unscrewing it. So generally you unscrew it, and in the barrel, it will have your ink cartridges. And then it's as simple as pushing the ink cartridge in to puncture the top of it, and then the ink will start flowing through your tip. And I prefer blue ink, so that's what I put in here. And the nice thing about using a fountain pen is you get the continuous flow. If it's a good quality one, you'll get a continuous flow of the ink. Now, again, the name of the company that makes this one is called Online, Online. And they're very nice. This is a medium nib. So the end of the tip here comes in different millimeter sizes. And I like the medium to larger tips. So that's why I got the medium tip of this one. But you can see how beautiful the lines are. Now, what you're going to find is that for most fountain pen companies, when they send you the cartridge contains in it ink that is water soluble. So it acts more like a watercolor ink than it does a permanent ink. So let me just show you here. So this is just water on here. And you're going to see that the ink is, even though the ink was most of the way dry, it's still running. And that's also true. This, I wrote the word hello quite a while ago, and it should still run. So it still runs, it just doesn't quite run to the same degree. Can you see the feathering on there of the letters? Oh yeah, oh yeah, it's spreading out. And that's because it's not a permanent ink. And when it gets wet, it does this spreading. Now you can use that to your advantage if you want to draw something and you want to use the water. So for instance, let's say that I want to draw a bubble, and I do this, and I'm going to add a little bit of extra here for a shadow. And then I can come in and hit it with my brush, and you see how it's running. And so instead of using that ink like a writing ink, I'm actually using it more like a paint. The only thing is, a lot of these inks are not light fast. So that means it's possible that if you created a work of art with it and then you put it in a window or near a window and it had exposure to sunlight, it may fade. So that's the typical inks that come in a pen like this. Now hold on just a second. I'm actually going to pull out some of the color just so I'm using my basic watercolor techniques with this. But what you're going to see is that underneath there, there's a little line. There's a little line where I actually pressed on the paper with the nib of the pen, which if that's an effect that you like, that's fine. So that's kind of how I use a regular fountain pen. If what I want is to write with it, like for instance here, it just looks beautiful. Just know that if it gets wet, it's going to run. And with the hurricanes we just had, Hurricane Helene got a bunch of my stuff wet, and the ink ran because I love using a fountain pen, but the ink ran. So there is a solution to that, and that's to use an ink, to take a separate ink that you know is permanent and will not run and put it inside your pen. So let's take a look. Drum roll. This is the Sailor brand of Fude. That means, in this case, bent nib fountain pen. Now, I keep wanting to pull the top off because these micron pens that I use all the time, also permanent ink that doesn't run. I mean, the top pulls off, but I have to keep remembering that it's a screw off top here. It has this beautiful bamboo green color. Oh, so pretty. So what you're going to notice here is the tip of that is bent. It's bent. It's at a 55-degree angle. So it's called a steep bend, but it's still going to give you relatively small lines. Now, inside the barrel here, I'm going to expect to find some ink, right? So I'm unscrewing it, and sure enough, inside, it's a big barrel. So they give you 2 cartridges of ink. But this ink is not permanent ink. It's going to do what this pen, the online pen, just did. It's going to run. So I do not want to put this ink in my pen for illustration purposes. I want to use a permanent ink like this. So I'm going to take these, I'm going to set them aside. Let's put them up here for right now. And then I'm going to use an ink converter, it's called. So an ink converter lets you take ink that's made for fountain pens. Remember that. It needs to say, this says for fountain pens. Do not use just any old ink. For instance, this is a Higgins acrylic ink. Do not use acrylic ink in your fountain pens, because whatever ink ends up sitting inside this part of your reservoir, it's going to dry and it's going to gunk it up. So you will not be able to have a continuous flow. You don't want that. Okay. So this acrylic ink, it does not say on it, it says it's waterproof, but it does not say on it that it is for fountain pens. So please do not put it in your ink converters for fountain pens, okay? Same is true for China ink, this, or India ink. So this is India ink, and this is not for, let me see what it says here. Black, opaque, light fast, and indelible. That means that when it dries, it's permanent for graphic instruments and drawing. This ink will work perfectly with my dip pens. Fantastic. My dip pen, there's a teeny tiny little reservoir here on the dip pen, and that's all that it's keeping. So it's easy for me to clean it when I'm done working with the India ink. Some people call it China ink. Sometimes you'll see it'll say China ink on it. Do not use this in your fountain pens, please. You're going to ruin your fountain pens. Don't do it. So here's another one, the Soho, which is Jerry's Artorama brand, India ink. Do not use this in a fountain pen, okay? Don't do it. But the R&K, the Rohrer and Klinger, yes, the sketch ink is specifically says for fountain pens, roller ball pens, and brushes. And it also says that it is waterproof. Okay. Now, another interesting thing about, before I fill up this ink converter and put it into the pen, is that the ink converters, at least from Sailor, come with different colors, like a different color plunger on the top. That's a plunger that has a little screw on it, and you screw it up and down in order to uh, have the ink come out or go back into your pen. Okay. Um, so I have one in brown, I have one in black, and I have one in clear or white. You see the 3? The reason that I bought the 3 different, and they have red and they have blue tops to these. So where that's significant is that the one with the brown top, I'm going to fill with brown ink. So this color Lily is actually a sort of walnutty brown color. So that is going to go into that converter. Then the black one is the one that I will put the other ink in, the black ink here. And then the white one, or clear top, is the one where I'm going to put the white ink here, the D atramentus. So this white will go in this one. And that way I know that I'm always keeping the right ink in the converter. It just makes it easier so you don't have to clean as much. Now, technically, I should have one pen for each one of these converters. because once you've put the ink in there, you've filled it, you need to put it directly into the pen. You can't just leave it sitting around. It doesn't seal on top. So, you know what that means? That means I'm going to have to get two more of these pens, and then I'll have to draw, paint, or write on the bottom of the pen which color is inside there. But I'm keeping my converters separated by the color at the top there. So let's go ahead with the brown one, because that's the color I want to put in today to do the branch that we're illustrating. And so let's open this up, the ink converter cartridge. Whoop. Come on now. It is in there. Good. I put it in there very well. There it is. So here, we'll take that out of there. So there is the converter. Now what you're going to notice is if I turn this, well, let's see, it's Japanese, so it goes the opposite direction of what you think. It's funny. Yes, it goes the opposite direction of the way that, you know, we have the righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Well, it's opposite for them. So I'm turning it toward me in order to have the piston go down. So there's a little piston inside there. And before I draw up the ink, the piston needs to be down, because then to draw up the ink, I'm going to turn the piston the other way and it's going to pull ink up into it. So let's do that. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to install the converter on the pen. So the end here is open and it's going to go inside, get shoved up inside here, and then it'll click so that you'll know that it's fully installed. And then we're going to take this top. I don't like to shake my inks because then you get bubbles. I don't want the bubbles. I just want to gently turn the ink like that. See, there's still bubbles anyway. How do you like that? Let me see if I can pop the bubbles. Yeah, just using my dip pen to pop the bubbles. Ooh, let's charge the dip pen. So there, my dip pen, I put some ink in there. Oh, look how beautiful that is. Oh my gosh. This ink is so beautiful. So that is a dip pen, but a dip pen has a very small reservoir. So I have to keep, that's why it's called a dip pen. I have to keep dipping, dipping, dipping in order to fill the dip pen. So let's do. So that is, there's enough ink in there that you can get a word or two in. And then if I want to clean it, then in this case, I'm wiping most of it away. I'm going to use a different cup. Let me use this cup right here just to rinse it out in. And I don't want to submerge this whole thing in there. I just want to submerge the tip to clean it like that. And then I wipe it. It does help if you have a cloth nearby. So if I were using a cotton cloth instead of a paper towel, that's even better. There we go. So I just want to clean out that reservoir that's inside there. Can you see the two pieces, I hope? Because there's a little flap on top, and that's the reservoir that holds more ink in there. But now it's clean. So that's how quick it is to clean the dip pen. Now we're going to put ink into the fountain pen. So this is called charging the fountain pen. And then as we draw with it, we're discharging the fountain pen. So I'm going to put the tip into here. And then I'm going to turn this. Let me see if I can put it on an angle so you can see. And often you have to do it several times in order to fill the whole thing. But let me just pull it out so that you can see. See how there's ink in there now? There's a little bit of space where it didn't get in there, but that's okay. I'm just going to retwist it a little bit and do it one more time. Actually, it needs a lot more. Let's try that again. Dip it in. So I'm dipping the tip of my pen in. Oh, much better. Oh, better, no better. Okay, that was a nice clean fill. So now that part of the ink converter is full. Now there's a bunch of ink on the tip here, so I'm just going to wipe that off to keep the top of my pen clean. And what's nice is that you can then close this because now you have a charged fountain pen. When I'm working with a dip pen, I don't want to leave my ink bottle open for the whole thing for a long time because what happens is it evaporates, the fluid evaporates, and then it begins to get thick as you get closer to the bottom. So I will take this ink if I'm working with a dip pen and I will put it in a short little container. So a little container like this. And then that way it's deep enough that I can dip the top of my pen in it. You can see here, but it doesn't expose the entire bottle to the air for a long period of time. So that's what I like to do if I'm going to be using the dip pen. I actually have little glass jars that are a little bit bigger than this, and they're like perfect for using with the dip pens. That's usually how I do it. But let's take this Fude pen, and now we're going to screw this back in here. Oh, here we go. Do it the opposite of what I think it needs to be. No, that one's good. All right, so now this pen is charged. Let's go ahead and just do some practice strokes. Ah, look at that. The ink is flowing. Life is good. Okay, so the interesting thing about a Fude pen, which is the bent nib, and the reason that a lot of urban sketchers like to use this kind of fountain pen is that bent nib allows you to make different types of lines. So what you're going to notice is this was the dip pen. So there was a lot of ink flow from the dip pen, and you can see that the lines are very thick. That's because the tip here, the nib, is a C3. It's flat on the top and it's quite wide. You can see that the nib there is quite wide. So that's because I like to work with wide lines, at least initially when I'm doing my drawings. This pen, as you can see here, is not depositing as much ink, and so the lines are slightly lighter. And depending on the angle that you use the pen at will determine how wide the line is. So let's do a couple of test lines here. So we're going to do, that's a nice thick line, and what I'm doing is taking that whole 55-degree angle and I'm putting it perpendicular straight down on the paper like that, and that gives me a nice thick line. Now the more you lift it up, the more you lift it, the less of this tip is touching. So I'm going to lift it a little bit higher. So now I'm getting a thinner line, and then I'm going to almost put it over like this so that I'm getting the very tip right here. And that, well, you have to bring it back just a little bit. So this is why a lot of illustrators love the Fude pen, is because you get 3 different line widths. You get the thick line width, you get your medium average line, and then you get a really tiny line. So where does that come into play? That comes into play, let's say that I'm doing a branch of the tree. So I want my lines to be a little bit thicker, right? As I'm doing that part of it. And it's going to come up here. Maybe I have a little knot in the branch there. So that's the larger part. But then if I want to get thin lines, because I want to put some some shading in. Right now I'm turning the pen on its side just a little bit and using the side of that bent nib. And now I'm getting these fabulous lines. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. And then if I wanted to go in and do some cross hatching, I just turn it the other direction. And then I come back in the other direction. So the nice thing is you can adjust the angle. You can adjust the angle of that tip, and with one pen. What's the name of the pen? Thank you, Margaret. This is the Sailor is the brand, so Sailor. And then it is the Fude, so F as in Frank, Ude. That's the bent nib is the Fude. And then it's called Demanon, DE, and then MANNON. Now this pen will be, I'll have a link to where you can get the pen in the video description later tonight or tomorrow on YouTube. And I'll also add it to my, website. When you go to my website, which is deetsart.com, oops, sorry about that, right here. When you go to deetsart.com, there is a page that says supply links. So right now I don't have this pen in here because it's brand new. I just got it, and I just got these inks that I'm very excited about that I wanted to share with y'all. And so this is not yet on my website, but it'll be on my website tomorrow, the links to it. All right. So I appreciate you asking, but again, it is the Sailor Fude de Manon. And that has a 55-degree angle on the tip. Now, Sailor makes another pen, another fountain pen that is black. So instead of the body being green, like this one, I love this bamboo green color. Their other pen is black color, and it has a Fude nib as well, but it is like I think 40 or 44 degrees. So it's not quite as bent, which means you're not going to get quite as wide a line out of it as you will out of this one. And if you watch other videos from folks who are urban sketchers these days, oh my gosh, so many of them, you're going to see them using this particular pen. That's why I was like, I have to get my hands on that and find out why everybody's so excited about it. Now, I do want to let you know also that on the lid right here, there's a little nub right there. And that is just to keep it from rolling off the table. So it keeps it, it'll stop it right there if you put that on it. Okay, now what I wanted to show you with this incredible sketch ink is that it's permanent and it dries very quickly. So I showed you before that if I was using the standard fountain pen ink, that it will fade or it will feather if you add water to it, right? So this one, let's see if this is dry enough. Oh my gosh, it is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I am so happy right now because once it's dry, and it actually dries very quickly, it doesn't go anywhere. And from an urban sketching standpoint, it dries so fast, and it gives you the opportunity then to come back in with your watercolors. Here, I don't even need to open this one. I have some watercolor here on my dish. So let's take a little bit of this brown right here, and I can just come and drop it right in over top of it. And it's perfect. Tell me the name of that ink again. Yes, of course, Margaret. No worries. Like I said, I will have the links on my website and in the YouTube video description later tonight or tomorrow. But it's super easy to drop in your watercolor over top of this ink. Oh, which makes it perfect for urban sketching. Now, you wanted to know what the ink was, and this is, I've done a lot of research on the different kinds of inks that will work in your fountain pen. Now, not only does it work in the fountain pen, You can also use the same sketch ink with your dip pens, and you can use the same sketch ink with a brush. So I had mentioned before that a rigger brush, which is this long skinny tip brush here, works really well with them. Don't worry, Margaret, I'll tell you in just a second. So let me get this rigger brush in here. I love the rigger brush because you can make some really cool lines with the rigger brush. And because it's a brush, if you put a little more uh, pressure on it, you can get these like incredible lines with it. Now I just went in to a wet patch, and so the ink is feathering. So yes, you can get this ink to feather if you apply it to a wet area, and then it'll spread and do what a normal ink will do. However, it dries lightning fast. It is so awesome. So I could even draw my branch using this rigger brush. And so we'll just do this, and we'll have a branch come off here, come up here. What I like about using a brush is I can use this permanent ink similar to my Chinese inks or my Asian inks, and it'll give me a similar look. Now, what I'm using right now and what I put into my Fude pen was this brown color they call Lily. And you had wanted to know the name of the company, so it's Rohrer and Klinger. Rohrer and Klinger, Leipzig company. Okay. And I think it's made in Germany. Let's see. Made in Germany. Yes, made in Germany. But if you just look up sketch ink, you're going to find it. And then they have pictures of women on the labels with names for the ink. Instead of saying brown, they call this Lily. And instead of saying black, they call this Lottie. So they give it ladies' names, but they are waterproof once it's dry, and they are appropriate for fountain pens. Fabulous. And then um, there's another type of ink. Now, I like to work with brown ink, which is why I just filled with the color Lily here. And that's because when I'm using it, I'm not writing. Googled it all. You're welcome. I went ahead and I like to use it for drawing. So since I like to use it for drawing, and like I said, tonight I'm going to work on this and the branch, the tree branch. So this lends itself more to a dark brown than it does to a black. For me, the black, from an illustrative purpose, is a little bit heavy. And so I feel like this brown, this dark brown, is a little more forgiving in the sketch ink, which the color is called Lily. Um, and then this is also excellent ink for fountain pens, but again, it'll work across your dip pen and a brush as well. And that's D Atramentis. So it's spelled DE and then Atramentis. D Atramentis. Also made in Germany. And it is exclusive handmade ink for fountain pens. So it says it right there on the bottle. And I feel it's important for you to have a good white. And the thing is that I don't have to, even though I did get a converter for it for the white. So if I want to, I can put it in a pen. But I like something like this to use with a brush, which you absolutely can do, or I could use it with a dip pen as well. So I could come back in here and put details in white. And this Diatramentis, not all whites are created equal, everybody. They just aren't. And I did a lot of research on it. And this one in particular, which is why I bought this one. Hey, Florida Glass Girl, I see you pop back in. This particular white does beautifully at sitting on top. Oftentimes they will, especially if you have an under ink like this blue ink that was in this one that is not permanent, not waterproof, the blue would lift up when I put the white on, and it will mix the colors together so you won't get that nice crisp white on top. But if you use the sketch ink, or you can also get D. Atramentis black document ink, then you can put the white on top of it after the black permanent is dry, and then you'll be able to get the play on black and white. So I'm going to bring it up a little closer here for you so you can see all of that, like the white lines there. Oh, this just makes me so happy. So happy, so happy. Um, and then let me just show you, I showed you before the wide tip, that's the C-tip flat calligraphy nib in the dip pen. This is a vintage dip pen. Like I said, it's about 40 years old, or 1940-ish, made in the USA, this handle. And it has a little bit different top. Remember I showed you this top is round and the little C fits in here like this? You just find a spot in that round and push the tip in. This one is a little bit different, and I actually had to do some research to figure out how to install the tip. So this one has a different kind of top to it, and there's a flange there, and your C fits right behind the flange. Okay, so let's put one of the bent nib tips here of the speedball. So this Fude pen, the bent nib has a triangle shape to it. Okay, right there. Now I'm going to pick one of the other ones of the speedball that has a round tip. So this must be a B. Yeah, B3 is the number. There's the numbers right on top there, and it has a bent nib round tip to it. So let's try that one. So on here, I'm going to put it between the flange and the backing here. So that's where it gets installed, and then you just push it in. But trust me, it took me a while before I figured out how the heck do I put my nib in there. But it's very secure, more secure than the just regular push-in ones. Okay, so let's take this, and I'm actually going to put some spit on it, like I had said, to get it prepped. It has been used before, but that just sort of gets it ready to go. Okay, so this is a bent nib. It wouldn't be called the Fude. It's just a regular speedball B style round bent nib. Okay, so let's use the black. So you can see the difference between the black and this dark brown, okay, from sketch ink. So I'm just going to gently turn it since I haven't used it today. If I've already used it, I don't worry about it too much, but mixing it. But if I haven't used it at all, there's a film on top of there. Okay, here we go. Now, like I said, you don't want to dip too far. You just want to dip about that far into the pen where the reservoir is so it can capture the ink. And that will fill up the reservoir. And then I usually will tap it on the side to be sure and run it on the side because I do have a blotter. Usually I will have another piece of paper next to me. That's my blotter paper because I don't go straight from here onto my artwork surface. I always have a blotter so that I can make sure that the ink is flowing on my blotter. And so let's see what kind of lines we can get with this. So I'm going to hold it up so that that's perpendicular to the paper, so it's flat. That should give us our biggest line. Oh, nice, nice. And then I'm going to change the angle a little bit. Let's see. These are, for the most part, these are pretty big lines. So this size 3 in the B gives you big lines here. you're not getting the same level of control and detail with this nib that you get with the, the Fude nib. Okay, but it gives you beautiful lines. And while those lines are still wet, I can take a brush and I can come in here and I can move the paint around. The nice thing, if you're going to use a brush with these, is just like any watercolor, the more water you put in with it, the more gray you can turn that black. So by adding a bunch of water to this, I'm able to turn it into a gray. So maybe you want to do a shadow or something. Let's say I wanted to do a shadow over here. I could just put a line of the black and then come in with a brush. Boom. And I have quite the shadow going on, just like that. The thing is, though, once this is dry, that's it. It's permanent. It's not going anywhere. That color will be permanent once it's dry. But that's using a dip pen, and it went a long way. I mean, I'm sure I could let's write hello. So I did all that drawing, plus I'm still writing. So this pen will actually go quite a ways with the ink that's in the well right there. But you wouldn't want to risk having an open bottle of ink like this if you were doing urban sketching. No, 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 no. Hey there, Vicky Mon over on Whatnot. Welcome in, welcome in. So here, cleaning out underneath there. Sometimes if I feel like there's excess ink or some dust from what I'm cleaning this off with gets stuck in there, I will take um, the back end, not the blade end, but the back end of an X-Acto knife, and I will run it. So I'm sticking it in there in between the two, the reservoir, and then I run the back end of it through and up. And then that will help clear out whatever might have been stuck in there before I put it away. Okay, nice. Now I wanted to also show you, that's using a bent nib. I also wanted to show you using this really tiny nib here, where it's teeny tiny. But I love the tiny nib for going in and putting details in. So let me just show you. So I filled the reservoir and then I'm tapping it and then it is ready to go. So it just has a different line weight to it. It's very thin and it's good for coming in and doing hatching. That's one of the things I like to do with it. Is that teeny tiny little nib. I like to do hatching with it. But if you look at the hatching here with this, what looks like a teeny tiny nib versus the hatching here of the Fude nib, of the Sailor Fude pen, this is actually thinner. So there's even that much more control with the Fude pen. Wow, pretty amazing. So let me clean this one up and let me get a bigger piece of paper and let's do this on the stick. So we'll do a quick rendition of that. Now this is still wet over here. So if I see how it's running, but it's only running because the ink is still wet. Once the ink is fully dry, it's permanent and it won't run anymore. Okay, so now we're going to use the Fude pen, which is charged with the brown lily color RNK sketch ink. Okay, so that was watercolor paper. It's very happy getting water on it. And that's what I suggest if you're going to be applying water, either this watercolor paper or possibly doing it on a mixed media paper that can take the wetness as well. So let's go ahead. And this is my Canson XL watercolor paper, cold press, 140 pounds. So there's a little bit of texture there, but that's okay because when I do my artwork, I like to have, I like the texture. I like that extra, um, where you're not being precise. If I wanted to be precise, I would use something like this and I would draw a line. So why don't we do this? I'm just going to use let me start at an inch. Just say I'm going to do this. So if I want a precise line, I can do something like this, right? And run it along there. Run it along a ruler. So that works. Whoop. There we go. Remember, I've got brown ink in here, not black ink. Oops, I went up a little bit high there. That's okay. Doesn't matter. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes, right? Oops. So I'm going to run it the other direction. There you go. Just to show you how you can use it with a ruler as well and get straight lines if that's what you want. Okay, so we're going to be drawing this, which is an empty, thankfully, hornet's nest. And I actually want it kind of at an angle because I want it to appear that it's hanging from this branch right here. So let's put this here. And then let's bring the branch down there like that. So then it's going to look like it's hanging from the branch, right? This is how I set up what's called a still life. So this is a still life. And then I'm going to use my pen to just draw the basic outlines of the still life. So we're going to start down here with this branch and we're going to bring it up. So this is where the power of observation helps a lot. And it's okay that this paper is textured with the cold press because actually the outside of this branch is also textured. Okay, and then it goes like this, and it has a bit of an angle there, and then goes up and comes around, and actually has a little end there, and then comes up and over and off the end. Okay, and then this part right here, it has another little branch that comes off here. Now what I'm doing is I'm using a light touch. I'm not touching it too hard. I can actually come back later if I wanted to and get the line a little bit more precise. But in the beginning when I'm sketching, I'm using a light touch so I can sort of control the way that it looks a little bit better. There we go. And we've got some lines here. We've got some extra darkness underneath here. So you can actually, like I said, with this tip, you can go a little bit thicker, which is great. Okay, we're going to come along here. And then we're going to do the other little branch that's coming off. There we go. And then coming back over here. Interesting thing is there's a branch that's sticking out back here. And then it's coming around. Interesting little turn right there. There's another little branch coming off of there. And it's coming down. There's actually a branch coming off like. Now, you can interpret this any way that you like. I'm using the branch as an example, but of course you can change things along the way if you decide that you want to um, do something different and add a little more interest to your piece. There we go. And then this is going to come down here. Now, because I'm using a light touch, what you're going to find is this is going to dry very quickly. So it's going to have like a little fast dry, and that means that I'll be able to put watercolor on it faster. Now over here, I've got a little bit of the Spanish moss growing, which is kind of interesting, right? The Spanish moss is coming up here, and they're little. I'm actually going to use the side of the pen here because I want the lines to be a little bit smaller there. And what I'm finding is it wants me to pull instead of push. It's not as happy with me uh, pushing as it is when I'm pulling. Let's come over here. There we go. So this is a little bit of the Spanish moss. It's coming here and around, and it actually loops over itself and then comes back down here. It's crazy, crazy. And then there's another little piece over here. So that's just some of the Spanish moss. Now I could come back in here and thicken whatever I want to thicken just by changing the angle of the pen, right? So I just got it a little thicker there. And for your thinner, wispier, you're just adjusting that. Now this actually can come this way. It can be just a little bit thicker right there. And a little thicker right there. That's the nice thing about the Fude is this pen is I'm able to adjust just by turning the tip. I can adjust the thickness there as I'm rolling it like this in my hand. Okay, let's just bring that there and a little bit thicker there. Okay, so that's some of the Spanish moss hanging off of there. Let me do a quickie time check. Okay, we're good on time. And then what I loved about this stick is all of the interesting lines and things. It has a lot of character to it, and there are a lot of lines that come up and across. And so I'm just going to sort of take my time and put a little bit of these into here. There are marks on it all over the place. And because it's weathered, it fell out of the tree, right? And here. So I'm not going to do all the lines right now, but I'm just giving you, showing you a demonstration. Now I'm making the lines instead of going straight at an angle this way, I'm making them go up and around because I want to give the impression that the piece is round, right? So I don't want my lines to be straight. I want them to give the impression of roundness. So I am going to finish these lines off camera, but I just wanted to show you what I would be doing as I'm observing it there. Okay, so let's get to the fun of the thankfully empty hornet's nest. So let's again. Now, if I feel like the ink isn't running as out of the tip as much as I want it to, then I'm going to come over to my blotter and I'm going to make sure that I get the ink running. So that's the advantage of the blotter, is to make sure that the ink is coming out to the degree that you want it to. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to start here and I'm going to do these little wells. So power of observation, right? You need to if you want to be drawing nature, you need to grab some nature. And one of the things I love to do is pomegranates. There's just something about pomegranates that I love. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3. There's another one. This is so cool, right? These are like a paper kind of thing. And then there's another one here. And they kind of have little lines in between them, almost. And then another one here. And What's interesting is this is a wasp's nest and not a bee's nest. So yes, there are sides to the chambers, but it's not the same as a bee comb. A bee comb tends to have a lot more um, geometry to it. So I'm going to bring this up close so that you can see what I'm talking about. So you see that? Yes, they have some geometry to them, but they're a little more, um, they are not quite the same as a bee's comb. Okay, so this actually, there's a little bit of side there. So the power of observation here. Now I am not going to do the whole thing on camera because that would make you nuts. So um, I'm just putting in here some of the gray areas. But you can see how easy it is to get those thin and thick lines with the edges of the Fude. You can do it, come on. I don't want the thick line. Okay, and let's bring it down this way just a little bit more. I want to make it a little more symmetrical for you. And then I'm going to mix up some watercolors, and we're going to put some watercolors in there so you can understand how the watercolor works with it. Let's put this one over here. Some of it, there's just, now if I want to go in and put some lines in to indicate grayness or darkness, then I can do that right here. And what am I doing? I've turned the Fude pen over. I've turned it over and I'm working from the tip right here. Now, sometimes when you're working from the tip like that, the ink doesn't flow depending on your angle, the angle that you're working in. And so if it's not flowing, all you do is take your blotter, turn it back over, get the ink to flow out, and then turn it back. So that's what we're doing here. Let's see this one. Oh, my pupper is in here. And then this one is quite dark in there. So this is where you're able to draw in your details. See, now it just stopped. There it goes. So you'll have to work with it to get it to do what you need it to do in terms of the thin versus thick lines. Let's put some little lines in here. This one right here just goes like that. Okay. This one, the darkness is down here. It's more light up top here. I'm going to pull this up closer to you in just a second so you can see how those lines are looking. I hear you, baby. She's here saying, Mama, Mama. But I gave her a big meal before we started. She probably wants to go out. There you go. I love these little scratchy details. All right, let me bring it up close to you so you can see. So you see the little teeny tiny lines that are in there that you can get using by turning this nib, and then you get the thicker lines there. Now, for sure, this area should be dry. So let's put a little bit of water on it, and that's how we'll be able to tell. And I'm just using my regular watercolor brush. This is a Princeton size 6 Velvet Touch. And I'm just going to do it over here so that it's a little bit out of the way, just in case it's not dry. but that is fully dry already. Yay. Okay. So this is watercolor paper. I can just dab it off and it'll dry pretty quickly. So let's go ahead and now once I put my watercolor down, if I want to come back later and uh, put more lines in with the pen, as long as the watercolor is dry, I can come back in and put more illustrative lines down. So the fact that I didn't finish all of these little stress lines all the way up is not going to matter right now because I can come back later and add them in. So let me just use my brush and let's get, this is the Art for Joy's Sake palette from Christy Rice. That's all these fun colors in here. Now, I will tell you that there were a few colors that I wanted that I work with in addition to what she has in her palette. And I added a dioxazine purple, which is a very heavy purple. She has a purple here, but this is more of a red purple. And the one I added is more of a blue purple. And then I added ultramarine blue, which is a darker blue than what she has here. And I added black, which she doesn't have in here. And then she has this bright neon yellow, which is awesome. But for some colors, I wanted a what's called a permanent yellow. So I put a permanent yellow in there as well. And then these two, the light green and the light, like the lilac purple, were just for fun because I just like the colors. So it's nice that when you receive her set, there are these little wells over here that you can either use for mixing or you can use to put your own custom colors in order to customize the set to yourself. And then there's the room over here for color mixing if you're traveling. Now, what I like to do is this is a Corel, um, so it's a Corel um, dish, serving dish. Isn't that cool? And I like the shape of it, the long, skinny shape of it. So I like to mix my colors on that Corel dish. So let's use the Corel dish and we'll use this and let's put some brown colors. Now, this is a beige color that she has in here, and I really like that as kind of a, like if you want to just drop in a base color and then work off of that. It gives you just a nice blush as a base. And then I like to work what's called wet into wet. That means there'll be wet color on here, and then I'll come and add another wet color on top of it. And the reason that I do that is I like my colors to bloom or just um, kind of mix themselves. They'll mix into each other. There we go. Oops, I missed a branch right back here. But that branch is going to be darker because it's in the back, right? So I'm going to take a little bit of that beige and I'm going to add a little bit of this brown that I had picked up earlier and put that back in there. So it's just slightly darker right now. And I love watercolor because you just need water to reactivate it. It's awesome. And then when it dries, it's super easy to transport. And when I first started doing art, I hated watercolor. Can you imagine that? I hated it. Oh, it was horrible, but it takes time to learn how a medium works, and then once you get comfortable with it, then you can. It takes practice, and it takes watching different artists do their thing with it, so that you can get more comfortable with it. Now, down inside this wasp's nest, there's some gray down in there. So that's why I put black on my palette here. A lot of people shy away from black, but I actually like black. And I don't want it to be all black because if you look at that nest, there's a little bit of brown in with that black. So I'm not using the black by itself. I'm warmifying the black by putting it in with a little bit of brown. And when you do watercolors, you're going to build up layers. So don't try to put the darkest color in there first. you're going to put a color in, usually a lighter color, and then you're kind of come back in later and build it up to be darker. Or not. It may be just perfect the way you put it in, and you may not need to. But that's what I'm doing here. Another nice thing about watercolors is that if the color is too dark, you can just take a little bit of water on your brush like these. And let's say that I felt like this was too dark. I can just, with a brush with water, I can come in and I can pick up some of that water. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the moisture off of my brush so I can go in there and pick up some of that color. So I want my brush to be damp, and then I can adjust. So I can, that's the reason why you want to use watercolor paper if you plan on doing this with watercolors to enhance your drawings, because you want to be able to have that lift. And regular paper like your Bristol paper or computer copy paper or some just regular writing papers don't have the sizing necessary like this has in the paper in order to allow you to lift the color back off. That's why it's recommended that even if you're doing illustration, if you plan on adding any watercolor to it at all, that you want to use watercolor paper. Okay, so that's putting the backgrounds in, the inside of those. And then let's do a little bit of darkening of the branches here. So this is still damp, which is great. I like that it's damp. And in her kit, in the Christy Rice kit, there's a brown here. Ooh, a beautiful, very rich brown. So let's come back in and put some of that rich brown in there. And like I said, if you feel like it's not the right color, some colors are more staining. That means you might put the color down and it doesn't lift back up very well. But this one, now I've got just water on my brush, and what I'm doing is feathering the edge of that color so it doesn't look like there's just a line there. It's going to bleed into the other color that I had there. And then that'll give you a softer transition from the darker brown into the lighter color. So I'm going to assume the light is coming from over here in the corner, this direction. And so the tops here are going to be lighter, and this part on the right side is going to be in the dark. Now that's not quite as dark as I would want it, but it's okay. You're building layers, building layers. So now let's add a little bit of blue in to get a darker. So I have some, the nice thing about watercolor is even though this is dry, I can reactivate it with a little bit of water. So then I'm gonna pick up some of that blue with the brown, and then I'm able to give almost like a color that some people are familiar with called umber. So I just created an umber by using a dark ultramarine type blue in with that. And that gave me an umber for the darkest dark here. There we go. So now we're beginning to get a darker shadow. So you can see here, the interesting thing is with watercolor, what you're going to find is that the colors as they dry are going to get a little bit lighter. So this is where I put down a layer and then I wait a minute to see, and maybe I'll work on another area and wait to see what the color looks like after it's dry. And then I may say, ooh, I need to deepen that color, or I need to lighten that color. To lighten it, I just use water on my brush and I lift it back up. If I want to darken the color, then I do this. I come in here and I use a combination of black or brown and blues and purples, and I use that in order to get my shadows. Now why do you draw the lines inside the paper? Oh, Florida Glass Girl. Only I normally don't. I just did it to show you that you can use the Fude pen with a ruler. Actually, you can use any of these dip pens with a ruler because the nib is deep enough from where the ink reservoir is that they work very nicely along the edge of a ruler to give you straight lines, if that's what you're interested in doing. So that's why I put the straight lines on there. Now, another reason that you might see me put straight lines on something, I'm going to show you, is that sometimes what I want to do is I want to see where the image is going to live inside the mat. So this is a 9 by 12 sheet of paper, and it's the opening here is 8 by 10. So it's slightly smaller. Often I will put the mat down and make little marks for myself and then draw lines and keep the artwork inside that way. So it just depends on what the plans are for the piece and what kind of mat it's going to go into. I just did this on this one to show you how to use that. You can use your fountain pens or you can use your dip pens and use a ruler with your inks. Okay. And get, if you want to do something that's more architectural, you know, some people like to do more geometric or architectural work. And so, you know, a ruler can be your best friend. I just suggest that you get a ruler that has one of these metal edges to it like this, because the metal edge is in the middle of the ruler. So in other words, I'm not just going to grab, say, a book and try to use the edge of the book. And the reason for that is that if this tip touches the edge of the ruler at the bottom where it meets the paper, it can bleed underneath. But if you have a ruler that has the metal edge to it that sticks out like this from the edge, then as you're running your pen down the ruler, what you're going to find is the tip is only touching the paper and it's not touching the edge of your ruler. So you'll get nice, clean lines that way. Okay, that's why these rulers have a metal edge on them like that. And some rulers don't have the metal edge, so you just need to know what your objective is and then pick the right tool to work with the look that you want to get. Thanks for your question, Florida Glass Girl. I appreciate it. All right, let's add a little more drama to the shadow on this because right now it's somewhat what I would call insipid, right? Because, yeah, you know, there's a shadow there, you can see it, but let's give it a little extra punch, right? So, oops, look at me. I'm getting, I was touching the watercolors, which are damp. So if I want to get a little bit more punch in there, then I add purple. That's just the way I like to do it. I drop in some purple with my blue and brown, and that gives me a nice, deeper, more interesting shadow. Now, this is the Christy Rice purple, which tends toward red. Okay, where here I added to the mix my own color, which is dioxazine purple, and this one leans toward blue. So if you understand color theory, you know that you can mix reds and blues together to get purples. Well, some purples tend more toward red, meaning there's a little more red in it, and some purples tend more toward blue, meaning there's a little more blue in it. So just bear that in mind as you're working with various colors, that I will get a deeper shadow if I use the blue leaning purple, dioxazine purple, instead of the red leaning purple that she has in her kit. But then it might be a little too purple. See that? Too blue. That's too blue. And because the tree is brown, brown is actually what? in the red family, right? And since brown, hold on just a second, I have to plug in my iPad. Since brown is in the red family, I want to use the purple that tends toward red. Um, that's my thinking anyway. You can do whatever you want because it's your art and nobody else's. There we go. So now I have this interesting, warm, cherry-like uh, shadow that leans toward purple. And that's kind of fun. It's something just a little bit different. And that's not even deep enough for me. Jeez. But the nice thing about watercolor is you can build up layers. And so when that dries, I can say, oh, that's not purple enough for me. Let me go just a little heavier on the purple. Let's add a little bit more brown. Yee. Let's get heavier on the brown and a little more on the purple. Oh, that's cool looking, isn't it? That's kind of cool. Okay, let's try that. Let's see what happens. Ah, much more chocolate. It needs to be a little bit more gray, I think, but that's okay. I can just put another layer on it. I just wanted to show you sort of the process that I go through as I'm working on something like that. Interesting, right? That gave a very interesting look to the side. Now it needs to be what? Feathered. So I'm just taking water on my brush, and actually I don't want my brush to be too wet. The ferrule, that's what this metal part is called. If there's excess water on the ferrule, it can drip into the work that you're doing, so you don't want that. So now what am I going to do? I'm going to come in here and I want to feather that edge because it looks a little obnoxious with that line right there. So this way it sort of gets rid of the line and just softens it, right? Now I didn't have to do it right away like now. I could wait and do it later because it's watercolor, so I can reactivate it. But I find it's a little easier to do the feathering if you do it right away. Okay. There we go. Ooh, you can do it. Okay, so now you've got something. Hey, Critter Chops, welcome in, welcome in. That you can then come back over after it's dry with watercolors and just work your watercolors to your heart's content. And this sketch ink is not going to go anywhere. You can see it's not running at all. Now I want to finish this up and then we'll do the giveaway and get started with the auction. I wanted to introduce to you these absolutely fabulous, what are called starry colors, Gansai Tambi, Japanese again, watercolors. And these are amazing. So if you want to add some sparkle to your artwork in terms of watercolor, I learned about these specifically from a professional watercolor artist who's been, I mean, she's amazing, Diane Antone, which you can find on YouTube as well. And um, so she was using these Gansai Tambi Gold sparkle watercolors. And oh my gosh, the gold and the sparkle is outrageous. So cool. Okay, I'm going to test them for you on here. I'm going to move this out of the way so I don't get like glitter everywhere. But the nice thing is these Gansai Tambi pans, you can pull them out so they come out and the number and the name is on the back. So I don't know if you can see that, but this one says 901 blue gold. So if there's a particular color that you end up using more than others, you can replace just this pan. Isn't that cool? It is so cool. These are awesome. And then this one they call white gold, but it's actually just like an iridescent sparkle. And so let's say that I'll show you. The red gold is probably the darkest one. Now, normally before I start working with these, what I do is I take a spray bottle and I spray these down. and give them just a minute, and that way they will reactivate because they are watercolor. So here's the red gold. This is, I find, is like the darkest one, is the red gold. So there's the red gold. Uh-oh, I'm going to have glitter all over the bottom of my water now. Let's move this over a little bit. And then the blue gold. There we go. There's the blue gold. A little bit lighter. And then the yellow gold. The yellow gold looks like butter. Butter! So let's put the, I think I like the yellow gold the best. But, you know, it just depends on what your application is, what it is that you're putting it on top of, what you're going to need. Then there's champagne gold. Oh my gosh. Gorgeous. So let me put it here on the dark area. That's where the gold really like shines, is when you put it on a dark area. And even more so when it's dry. Oh my gosh. So the champagne gold is like a hint of gold. It's almost like a beige gold. And then this one is light gold, they call it. I would say if you wanted to buy just one, buy the light gold or the yellow gold, depending on whether you prefer a lighter or a heavier application of gold. So the light gold to me also is like a hint of gold. Mm, 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 mm. So nice. But it doesn't overpower everything. And then of course your what they call white gold is actually just iridescent. So you can add that iridescent color or any of these golds to any of your other colors. So let's say that I want to create like a red iridescent. So I loaded my brush with the iridescent, and now I'm coming in with the red or the magenta. And then I'm going to put the magenta in there. And now I've got like a sparkly pink color, just like that. Oh my gosh. Fabulous. Fabulous. This is just such a versatile set. And here I'm going to show you this again. It says Starry Colors, 6-color set, and by Kuretake, Gansai Tambi Starry Colors. You can find the link to this on my website under supply links. So what I wanted to do is bring a little bit of that into here, because along the top here where the sun is shining, right? Let's bring a little bit of this. Actually, I'm going to bring a little bit of the blue gold in here. And so I'm just bringing it around the tops. And what that'll do is that'll just give it a little glint. And it'll make it, just give it that little extra je ne sais quoi. Hey, stay home to shop. Welcome in, welcome in. So we're going to just do this here. And a little bit here. So that's how you can just like drop in a little bit of excitement with the with those golds. Oh, they're so pretty. Oops. Okay. All right. Well, that's going to end the lesson part of the show. And of course, I will work on this more over the course of the week and get that finished up. I have a little bit more to do with the wasp's nest here in terms of drawing with the Fude de Sailor fountain pen with the sketch ink color Lily, which is a dark brown. So I'll be going and working back in on here with this. That's the beautiful thing, is this sketch ink is a permanent ink, so you can put it under as well as over top of your watercolor. So I'll be doing that later. And then I will show you next week when the artwork is done. Woo! But you can also watch my social media, like my Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, it's Dietz Art on Instagram. Facebook, Tristina Dietz Art. I'm like never on Facebook. I just post things from Instagram over to Facebook. And then, of course, you can always visit me on my website, dietzart.com. So thank you so much for joining me for this workshop. Oh, It was so much fun. These are new inks to me, and the Sailor Fude and pen is new to me, and I am so thrilled right now. I am just so thrilled. I'm in love. I'm in love with it. Now I understand why urban sketchers are crazy for this Sailor Fude and pen with the bent nib tip right there.